Hello, everybody. You are listening to Feed Your Mind. Today, we will discuss the height of the dome firmament.
The height of the dome? Ooh, I feel like I've missed an episode where they actually prove those domes to start with. Oh, well, we better roll the intro and find out the height of the imaginary dome that doesn't exist then. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Sarcastic Barman, and welcome to our channel, and welcome to another episode of Nut Job Tuesday. We're back on the playlist of doom given to us a few weeks back, and this week it seems to be looking at the height of the dome. Well, this is going to be interesting. I think that's the most polite word to use. Interesting. Let's see what evidence we have for the height of the dome. This will be amusing.
And so our research begins with the Van Allen radiation belt. The Van Allen radiation belt is said to be a band of deadly radioactivity from the sun that surrounds the Earth. And it's the main reason why the moon landings never happened, because there's no way that astronauts were able to make it through these Van Allen radiation belts without getting cooked like a microwave.
Hang on a minute. If your research has begun with the Van Allen radiation belts, then how did you prove the Van Allen radiation belts exist? Because surely you can't be taking NASA's word for it or other scientists' word for it, because they're the same scientists that also say the Earth is round. Or you're just going to cherry pick their ideas because you can't fucking think of any of your own. I wonder. We're also going to use your ideas. So if the Van Allen radiation belts, we know were wrong. The deadliest bit, between 9,000 and 12,000 miles. So if the Van Allen radiation belts exist, we know the dome must be above 12,000 miles high. So we're going to make a little list, and it's going to say 12,000 miles plus. And we'll slowly weed down to how much fuck up of your dome idea we'll have. And if it ends up being 5,000 miles, I'm going to laugh my tits off at the end of this.
And so this Van Allen radiation belt is said to begin at 620 miles up and extends all the way to 3,700 miles up.
Oh, do you not like the outer Van Allen radiation belts? When it's the worst bit, a lot more of it has higher density of radiation. So yeah, I mean, look, we got a picture. Woo, cutaway picture. So yeah, do you not like the outer one? Or can you not use the outer one because that doesn't fit with the idea of the dome, because you're just cherry picking little bits of information off different people? Of course.
And so 620 miles is also the highest point of the ionosphere. Check out my White Alice video if you want more details about the ionosphere. We're also going to discuss it more in this video as well, because it all seems to be connected to the height of the dome firmament.
I don't think the White Alice video was in the playlist we got given originally, so I might have to go and dig that one out. Effort. But so you're going to go somewhere around the height of 600 miles then? Okay, we'll see as we go, I suppose.
And it is described as a shell of electrons and electrically charged atoms and molecules that surround the Earth. Now, according to my research, I highly suspect that this line between the maximum height of the ionosphere and where this Van Allen radiation belt begins would possibly be the maximum height of the dome firmament.
So the maximum height of the dome is now 600 odd kilometers. Because of reasons. So really you didn't even need to talk about the Van Allen radiation belts, did you? Because you're basically getting to where they basically start. Ionosphere maximum height. Psh. So in other words, we can still have an ISS because that's inside the dome. I want to know what your level of research here is. Like, I'll cherry pick that one. I'll have a little bit of that one. We'll ignore these bits that these little bits rely on because, yeah, we'll ignore the fact that the ionosphere is there because of the solar radiation ionizing the particles and shit like that. So, yeah. But I want to know, is the sun inside the dome or outside the dome? Because that's going to be an amusing question.
Because an interesting thing about this ionosphere description is it says a shell of electrons. A shell to me sounds like a firm and solid object, because the thing is, the scientists are literally saying that they're bouncing signals off of the sky. Now, their excuse is saying it's a shell of electrically charged particles, but this seems to be their excuse and their only way to describe what they are witnessing, because if you think about it with common sense, the air is supposed to be thinner the farther you go up. And so how are they possibly bouncing signals off of the sky?
Now, there is a pressure gradient, that bit's not up for debate, but if you think they're bouncing the signal off an actual dome, I want to know, why is the dome affected by the sun? I mean, at certain times of the day, the signals propagate better than others. There's basically a 27-day cycle as the sun's rotating that signals work differently. At night time, it's different to daytime. If there's extra solar activity, sunspots, anything like that, these can change how far and how well signals propagate. Do you have an explanation for that? If it's a solid thing, why? And if you're going to come out with something like, well, the sun's heating up the dome or cooling down the dome or anything like that, then we're going to need more actual research and some maths numbers from you. And I'm going to guess there's going to be no maths numbers at all.
I suppose you're going to say that there's some type of magical magnetic field that happens to be protecting the Earth. This magnetic force field is said to have formed by some Big Bang accident. Or we can go with, there's a solid dome firmament above us.
Oh yeah, let's go for that. Let's go for the giant space wizard in the sky, who no one can see, made a solid dome that no one can see, that there's no physical evidence for it because no one can get that high apparently to touch it or anything like that. But more importantly, that it's so good of a solid dome, we can bounce radar through this solid dome to bounce it off the moon to come back after like 2.5 seconds, which is equivalent to around a 477,000 mile journey. So you basically halve that, your 230-odd thousand miles. Hang on, isn't that the distance that we say the moon is anyway? How does that work with your giant space dome, space wizardness of it's only 600 miles high? Because if it's solid, I don't think this plan's working out for you as well as you kind of hoped.
In my Dome Firmament playlist, we also discuss satellites, because satellites are definitely not what you were told either. You see, satellites do not exist. They're just bouncing signals off this reflective dome firmament. The reflective properties of the dome firmament is part of the reason why you see rainbows, sundogs, and more. Because according to my research, the dome is most likely some form of reflective material. There's descriptions that say it's as a molten glass.
Oh, we've definitely fucked up here. We've missed an entire video about how satellites aren't what we've really been told they are. Ooh, that sounds more interesting than this entire bloody video so far, but I can see it being filled with just as much conjecture as this one's filled with. Assumption upon conjecture upon research. Whew, had to quote that one. Good God. I mean, people do take photos of satellites. You do understand this, don't you? I mean, they're grainy photos, but they do take photos. They take really good ones of the ISS that maybe would be worth you looking at. I've got no idea how old this video is, but with Starlink going up, you really are going to need to rethink some of your sorts of ideas at this point. And as for rainbows, you know, they're round. They're not like dome-shaped, don't you? So that's going to be an amusing one for you to figure out.
Molten sounds kind of metallic, and it could be a reflective metallic type glass. It sounds like it's probably see-through as well. And so this material doesn't seem like it's known to mankind.
Hang on a minute. A molten metallic glass-like thing that's also not dripping on us, considering it's molten. You know, liquid. I don't think you thought absolutely any of this shit through, because wow, that was a fucking stupidity of the highest order.
But there's also another striking coincidence of this ionosphere, because they say it begins 31 miles up. And so 31 miles up is actually the same height of the highest balloon that has ever been launched. You see, balloons will always pop around 30 miles up or lower. And this is allegedly due to the low air pressure that forces the balloon to expand until it bursts. And so scientists have been creating these balloons to be more flexible so they don't burst. What is causing these balloons to pop at 32 miles up? And what's with the coincidence with 32 miles being the lowest part of the ionosphere?
Hang on a minute, because that was round and round the fucking block there. So we started off with the lowest point of the ionosphere, 31 miles, which apparently was the same height as the highest balloon that's ever gone. Then you had on screen the highest balloon ever was 32.9 miles. So then you changed the lowest point of the ionosphere to, say, 32 miles. I mean, come on, really? You're just drawing connections here with no actual fucking anything. If it had probably been a slightly warmer day, that balloon might have got to 33 miles. Then I'm sure there would have been, whoa, 33, see, look at the height, whoa, magic, whoa. Fucking balls, absolute balls. And I love the fact it's still ionosphere. It's not ionosphere, is it?
And so, like I said, the ionosphere ranges from 31 miles up to 620 miles up. So if it begins at 31 miles up, this suggests a possible gradual firmament. Maybe the lower point of the firmament begins with some resistance at around the 30-mile height, and then gradually becomes more and more dense to the point where it's a solid dome firmament at around the maximum height, which is around 620 miles up.
What? I mean, really? What? So you think now, instead of just having your solid dome that no one can touch, no one can see, no one can detect, we now have a gradual dome. So it becomes slightly more dense as you go up until you hit the solid dome. Really now? I mean, you know there are cameras on certain balloons that have shown the balloon getting bigger until it pops. I mean, God, I don't know how many times I've used it already this year. Mr. Sensible's Mage project. You can physically see the balloon getting bigger as the gases expand because of the lower density air pressure around it. I mean, how does your dome account for lower fucking density air as it goes up? And what the hell is keeping this lower density dome away from the higher density dome and not dripping down onto his dome, which is molten? So far we've got a molten glass solid dome at 600 miles that's not dripping on us. But below that, we've got a less dense fucking dome, which is popping balloons. It's nothing to do with the gas expanding in the balloons. Though you have no evidence for this, it's just you're like drawing two fucking things together. Because you cherry-picked ionosphere off one fucking scientist, but ignored all the other bits of the atmosphere from all the other scientists. The actual sodding fuck.
There's also another factor to consider when analyzing the height of the dome firmament, and that's the possible curved nature of the firmament. You see, if the dome is an arch-like shape, there would be various points of height on the dome, 31 miles up. It seems to be the average point where balloons pop no matter where you are. Most balloons usually only range from 11 to 23 miles up, so this 32 miles up was an exception, and this happened around 2002. And so polar orbiting satellites are said to be as low as 444 miles up. The ISS is said to be about 220 miles up. Low Earth orbit is said to begin around 100 miles up and is said to range to about 1,200 miles up.
Hang on a minute. Are you going to say that polar orbiting satellites are fine and the ISS is fine because that's below the solid dome, but in the thick, not quite dominess, and that's how they stay up there, because obviously we can't have gravity, so we have a different density dome, though we don't have a pressure gradient on Earth, because, because then that would make absolute sense when it comes to your balloons expanding. So instead of balloons expanding, the balloons are popping in the slightly thicker density of the gradient of the dome, even though all pressure sensors and things that have gone up on these domes show that the pressure decreasing and things like that. And then the ISS is obviously a giant balloon orbity thing that sits in... is it like a submarine that sits in the slightly more densey dominess? And I think my brain has just actually switched off from fucking stupidity of trying to work this shit out.
Outer space is said to actually begin at 50 miles up. Firmament activity appears to begin around 30 miles to 100 miles up. And maybe 100 to 600 miles up could be the second heaven area, possibly, because maybe that's the area where the stars and the planets, which are actually stars as well, hang out.
Oh, wow. Just... between 100 and 600 miles up is second heaven, where the stars and planets live. And what's holding these magical stars and planets that are actually obviously stars up in this 100 to 600 mile area. At least if they were outside of the dome, it made more sense of why they don't come crashing down. And if they're really there, once again, you should be able to bounce a fucking signal off them like we can with the moon. Just the actual knob cheese of an idea you fucking had here. You fucking hell. Oh, complete and utter fucking spanner. You really are. Jesus. I don't know how many more weeks I can put up with this.
In my last video, I discussed how planets are actually stars. So make sure to check that video out if you get a chance.
Oh, damn. Well, I think we're going to have to look at that video. Put a comment down below if you want to watch how planets are actually stars. And I'm guessing he doesn't mean stars like most of science means stars in the way they're big hot balls of fucking gas like the sun. Because the sun is a star. Fuck me. Fuck no.
And so the second heaven area seems to be around the range where scientists are saying the orbit begins, with the ISS being 220 miles up. So I'll also be covering the ISS in a later video as well.
Psst. Called it. The ISS is a NASA spy drone aircraft thingy, and that's what the tracker's tracking. We'll ignore all the people that take photos of the ISS that have worked out the height of the ISS based on the pictures they've taken of the ISS angles and all that jazz. We'll work out people that have used fucking radio signals and worked out the height of the ISS. Though, obviously, if the ISS is in this second heaven bit where it's slowly getting thicker, could we say the ISS is basically a submarine? But weirdly, a submarine that doesn't get squished by the increasing density of the things, like the balloons that pop, that have expanded and popped in the higher density of... Oh, God, everything tastes like copper again.
And so in this video, we see how if the firmament is indeed a dome shape, that means that there would be various heights of the dome, literally to the point where the sky would meet the land somewhere in the Antarctic area.
Well, that's a bit of a problem then, really, isn't it? Because if there is a solid dome that just comes down and touches the Antarctic somewhere, then that makes it really difficult for those planes that have flown over the South Pole and come out the other side, because that couldn't happen on a flat fucking Earth with a giant solid fucking dome. Also, you've got the moon inside the dome there, which means that if we know the moon is 230-odd thousand miles away because of radar bounced off the moon. But if it's inside the dome, that means the dome's got to be higher than 238,000 miles, unless you're just going to ignore the fact that people bounce signals off the fucking moon. And then the sun's the same sort of height, but weirdly enough, you've got the sun at a lower height than the moon, which makes solar eclipses fucking weird. I'm going to guess that your picture isn't any sort of scientific representation of anything. I mean, that would imply that you've got any evidence to go with the scientific representation to fucking draw it up instead of just fucking brain farts. Because that's all you've got when it comes to this. There is no dome. You have no physical evidence of a dome. You've got nothing that supports your idea of a dome apart from a fucking old book that says dome. And just no. Absolutely no. There's definitely an ISS. There's definitely satellites. And the moon is definitely really fucking far away. And my brain, I think, has actually tried to leave my ears several times for this video, just for the sake of, oh my God, help me stop listening to this shit. Unfortunately, we've got more of these to do. But I hope everyone's enjoyed this one. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe down below. Big shout out to all my Patreons, members, and everyone who helps make these videos possible. And we'll see you all for Thursday when we're doing... I don't know. So, any recommendations, comment, and hopefully YouTube will let me premiere this video fucking properly. And if not, fuck you, YouTube.